Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Well. I'm so happy to bring this article to you, actually two articles. One, both articles will tell us when there will be peace in Ukraine, according to the Russians. They want to give us a reason. And the other one is finally Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, the Baltic States, total population 6.1 million people, will start behaving decently because they are connected. When the war starts in Ukraine, the Baltic states will behave beautifully, like normal. They will not be a jackals anymore. But let's see if that's gonna ever happen. What am I talking about? Here, my friends. According to New Voice of Ukraine, Moscow tells NATO to pull back from the Baltics to get peace in Ukraine. Do you think it's going to be possible? Russia would be more open to ending the war against Ukraine if NATO forces withdraw from the Baltic states. Deputy Foreign Minister Sergey Ryabkov claimed in a comment to state propaganda Responsible for Russia's relations with the United States of America, Ryabkov suggested that reducing the alliance presence in the region, and I'm quoting, will help put an end to the war. End quote. He then reiterated the usual Kremlin talking point about the Russo-Ukrainian war being related to NATO's post-Cold War expansion. My friends, this is not a Kremlin talking point. This is a fact. I will get in a small, short summary of how we got here. But let's go first, second, to the other article coming from, and I'm going to show you where the Baltic states are. Ukraine form. Russia not to end Ukraine war until NATO pulls from Baltic states. Excellent. And this is what he actually said. The American side requires practical steps aimed at eliminating the root causes of the fundamental contradictions between us in the area of security. Among the causes, NATO expansion is in the foreground. Without resolving this fundamental and most acute problem for us, it is simply impossible to resolve the current conflict in the Euro-Atlantic region. Ryabkov suggested that NATO's eastward expansion was among the main causes of the war. So he did not suggest, I think he straightly said it so, and that the roots of the conflict lie not only in Ukraine itself but also in NATO. The comments by the top Kremlin public. Okay, let's see where these are located. So this is Russia, obviously. This is Ukraine here. This is Belarus. These three countries had such a big, the Baltic states by the Baltic Sea. These three countries, without Russia here, Kaliningrad, had such a big mouth, total population 6.1 million people, just because they're part of NATO. The same with Finland. They have now such a big, unfortunately, big, just because they are in NATO nowadays. So remember, these guys right here. Now, why do you think the Russians would want NATO out? To invade them? That could be an alternative hypothesis. So let's start with a history lesson a little bit. NATO was called the Washington Organization, the treaty. Remember? And it was instituted, I think, in 1948 or something like this, 46, 48, right after the Second World War. And they said we created this to make sure there's peace in Europe and security as a defense, not as an offense. And if you don't know, Soviet Union sent a request to NATO to join NATO. Did you know that? Did you know that Soviet Union sent a request to be admitted into NATO? Yes, they were, and they didn't get the right response. So the Soviets said what? Okay, they don't want us, we don't want them either. Then they formed the Warsaw Pact, the Eastern Communist countries, socialist countries with communist parties, where our free world left us to the Soviets. Remember, they fought a war against the tyrant, which was Adolf Hitler. He lost, but they helped the other tyrant, Stalin, to be around, and he gave half of Europe to Stalin. This is the free world for you. So there was a Warsaw Pact and it was NATO. Okay, it was a balance. That's why when the Russians are talking about a multipolar world, that's how it refers. More positions, like in America. No, you have the powers divided in three. Check and balance. That's it. Supreme Court, the President's office, and the how do you call it? Congress. That's it. Three. And supposedly they check one another. But that's three. Over here, it's only one. United States of America, which has NATO. So after 1991, Soviet Union disintegrated with some traitors from within, obviously, and with a lot of pressure and spies from outside. Nevertheless, all of a sudden the communists realized that, hey, we were doing it all wrong. Let's be capitalist right now and love freedom and votes. Or maybe they learn from the Westerners how to steal votes. I don't know yet. Because after all, they're all human. So they're all going to do it at one point or another. So after 1991, if you remember, it was James Baker. It was the foreign minister of the United States of America. There is the Secretary of State, like Marco Rubio right now, or Mr. Blinkenstein before him, and others. So he met with the Soviets at that time, with his counterpart Shevardnadze. He was the foreign minister of Soviet Union at that time, in a time with what's his name, Gorbachev, Mikhail Gorbachev. And when they were discussing how they're going to carve Soviet Union, how they're going to do this, the Americans, in person of interest being Mr. James Baker, told the Soviets, guys, if you agree, so they needed the agreement of the Soviets, not the Russians, that's incorrect, the Soviets. If you agree with the unification of the Germans, East Germany with West Germany, then we, NATO, will not expand eastward towards you 1 inch, 2.5 centimeters. Okay? So that's what they said. They didn't write it anywhere, they didn't sign it. There was a promise, like a gentleman agreement. And the Russians, the Soviets again, the Soviets said, okay, man, davai, let them unify. And after they unify, nobody's going to come near our sphere of influence and not threaten us with any air defense systems in Poland and Romania. Well, the West lied again. Surprise, surprise, I don't think so. So they lied again, and they expanded 5 times, if I remember correctly. So if you look over this map, NATO at one point, when the fall of the Soviet Union was this. You see the yellow thing, this is Norway, was part of NATO. Then you have Denmark right here. Then you have half right here, Germany. Then you got right here around Czech Republic. You got Austria, which was supposed to be something like independent, because again, the Soviets manage it. And they go down here, nothing, Italy, right here. Then from Italy, you go down here to Greece, and you go to Turkey. And then everything else. So it was right here, it was the line. Right here, okay, kind of like that. So now the NATO got these two, pop, beep, 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 and pop. They want Ukraine too, they want Belarus too, they want Russia too. But the reason why NATO did not want Russia, one of the reasons was, according to the ruler of Russia, Mr. Putin, when he had a conversation with Bill Clinton, I think it was in 2000 or something like this, 2000. Bill Clinton asked, hey, maybe one day we can join NATO, be with you, friends, together, And Bill Clinton started laughing and said no. And Putin said, why? Well, you're too strong. Well, this is my organization. He didn't say that. I interpret it. This is my organization, and you're too strong. We are going to fuck you up. And they did. They expanded 5 times to the borders of Russia. So yes, there's not a narrative, that's a fact. The Russians said it many times before. So those words put over there by the Ukrainska Pravda and the New Voice of Ukraine, those guys are pieces of shit, just so you know. Okay, lying by omission and interpretation. Now, do you think NATO will withdraw from Baltic States? I don't think so. And they cannot be made to do it unless the Russians invade over there under whatever pretext. But they will not. Because next is going to be what? Poland? They want Finland and Sweden. I think NATO showed its true face, and the true face is the armed arm of the big interests who are in charge of our countries through our selected officials. We are just over there to play a game and supposedly confirm the other guys' choices. That's what we are. And they use our countries and our military, our energy to promote their interests in other countries and get them cheaper. If you don't comply, we are going to use our presidents, our foreign minister, ours, to impose sanctions on the ones that don't want to kneel. And if they don't want to kneel, the Americans already proven that since 1991 they dropped a lot of diplomatic tools, and they remained, as I say, with 4 tools in their diplomacy toolbox. I threaten you, then I will blackmail you, and then I will try to do a regime change, and if I can't succeed with those, I will simply attack you. These are the new diplomatic tools of the United States of America. The Americans will not agree. NATO will be structured, if the Russians don't collapse, NATO will be structured. I think it's going to be even more controlled by the Americans. Why would you think the Americans are going to say, you know what, we worked so hard to suck you dry of your resources in the Western Europe mainly, and have our boys being over there. Basically, you are an extension of whatever we want you to be. Why would just throw in the garbage all our effort? No, we're not going to let you be independent. We're going to be, I think, more tyrannical. The European play that we're going to have an army, we're going to have that. That's not going to happen. The Americans control the political and the military system over there, and the media more than the Europeans think they are conducting, or they are in control. So no, they're not going to retreat. But hey, it's a nice idea if you give up the Baltic states. Maybe the Russians, based on the experience in Ukraine, know that at one point Estonia, which has about 20%, 23% ethnic Russians in a country, probably these guys are going to start hurting them, how the Ukrainians hurt the ethnic Russians in the Donbass and then Crimea. So if it happens again, the Russians will go in as well. And how are we going to solve the problem? You have to win on the battlefield. Negotiations, you know how it is. I tell you something today, tomorrow I change my mind. Like Trump with the Iran deal. He didn't like what Obama did, his predecessor, representing the United States of America. He went over there, I don't like this. I mean, is that how a bank would talk to you? I don't like the deal today. A new president in the bank, the mortgage interest is not, let's say, 3.2. It's 12 right now. Why? I changed my mind. The other guy was the other director right now, or the other clerk. Now it's a different clerk, man. I make my own policy. It doesn't work. You lose credibility, but how should I put it? The credibility was lost a long time ago. The credibility was lost, if you want, and I'm not condoning that. I'm not, I have my own assessments of that. When they kept lying with the Indians, they found here in the Americas, or in this continent, this land. They broke a lot of treaties, if you remember, with the Indians. So they started early. It doesn't mean that the other ones were angels, but this idea that somehow these guys are superior or better than the other ones, I don't think so. They are in a certain way, but unfortunately on the planetary aspect, some other interests dominate and control a few big European countries, and through them they kneel the lower ones, the smaller ones, and they go deeper for a Lebensraum, living space. That's what they're looking for, living space. So when that evil guy called Adolf said that he wants to get the resources from he called them Russians, no, Soviet Union, if you want, the Soviet Union, get their resources from the Caucasus, oil and all that, Baku and natural gas. He meant that everybody else is going to either work for me, for the German people, or you're going to go to the Siberia, without knowing at that time that Siberia is very, 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 very wealthy, rich in natural resources. Nevertheless, these guys are doing the same thing as the other ones, but under the cloak of we are the good ones. No, you're not the good ones. No. You are better than others sometime, but worse than others some other times. Thank you very much for being with me again today. But very interesting. Even if NATO would withdraw, let's say, from the Baltic States, do you think it's going to be peace? Do you think that NATO will stop trying to destroy Russia? No, because the interests are behind all of this, and I don't care how many countries are sacrificed. I have to look beyond who is in charge. Do you think the Trump is in charge? Isn't that strange that Trump has been, what, 5 months already? 5 months in office, and he can't stop the Ukraine war in 5 months? That tells me that he didn't have any aces. I mean, at the minimum, if he could have taken Zelensky outside of Ukraine and install another puppet that would do whatever piece. But the fact that Zelensky is still over there and he talks like a thug, not like a clown anymore, like a thug, demanding this, demanding that, unsatisfied, when after he has his underwear full of holes because he's, what he is, it's something strange. The big interests stop Trump and say no, or Trump is part of them and say, you know what, I'm going to just play around. Have the baboons who voted me thinking that, yeah, I'm gonna promote your ideology or ideas here in domestically, but outside I'm gonna do the beating of the guys in Israel. I mean, and they're gonna let me figure things out here. Maybe you have to negotiate, even if you're a president, with the interests and the people and what ideas you might have. Maybe he wants to do certain things, but he has to feed the beast with Israel and Iran. When he's feeding that beast, then the beast is going to allow him to do something in like DEI and diversity, equity, inclusion, garbage, diversity, blah, blah. These things go like what's going on right now in Los Angeles. But hey, I don't think they will move 1 inch westward. NATO, I'm talking. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.